Cynthia, Hidden in the Moon Shadow is a game that we looked at in our most recent upcoming videos list, and it certainly caught the eye with a clear inspiration having been taken, aesthetically at least, from games such as Breath of the Wild or Horizon Zero Dawn. It classes itself as a 3D action adventure game and sells for quite a budget price. But is it worth picking up, or is Hidden in those Moon Shadows exactly where it should have stayed? Well, thank you to the production team for the review code, and now let's find out. So in terms of story then, you play as the titular Cynthia as she returns to her hometown after a while away. Excited to see her parents and her boyfriend again, she soon discovers that something is wrong in the town that she grew up in and must find a hidden artifact in order to make her bow stronger and put an end to the evil that has plagued the town. So as mentioned then, this is an action adventure game split into 5 chapters. Each chapter has a self-contained area that you will need to explore, and the emphasis here is very much on stealth and puzzle solving. Certain parts of the area will be locked off, be it by gates or something in the way, and you will need to find a way to get past these areas, exploring the environment to find switches or solving minor puzzles in order to move on. As well as this, there will be enemies around, and if you are spotted by one of these, you will be captured by their magic and need to restart from the last checkpoint. You cannot engage the enemies in combat exactly, but you can use your bow in order to disengage or incapacitate them in a number of ways. You start off with a standard energy arrow, and you can use this to cut ropes. This could help with puzzle solving, but it can also knock down boxes, say for example, which will fall on enemy heads, knocking them out for a while and allowing you to get past. You'll need to use the grass to your advantage, ducking down by pressing L. At these points you are invisible to the enemy, and you can then use your timing to get past them when the opportune moment arises. Later on in the game though, you will unlock new arrows, such as one that you can shoot directly at the enemy, which will lower their field of vision momentarily, again allowing you to get past, and you'll also unlock an animal companion, which again you can fire towards the enemies, dazing them for a while and giving you a moment to get past. In order to build the arrows though, you will need to craft, and to do this you'll need to pick up the various ingredients and components that you'll find as you go through each chapter. The standard parts are littered about pretty much everywhere, and as you unlock the other arrows you'll find the extra parts you need for that particular ammo, and then of course can craft these too. You can craft at the fire pits that you find strewn across the chapters, and you can switch between the arrows or the animal companion once you've unlocked them by pressing the 4 directions on the D-pad. Now for the most part the game does play very well. It does exactly what it sets out to do, with a combination of stealth and puzzle solving working to create quite interesting levels. My biggest complaint would be that some of the puzzles are made more difficult to solve by the fact that you can't actually see what it is you're trying to do, owing to where Cynthia stands and where the puzzle is located. For example, it may well be that you need to raise and lower a bridge, making sure every part ends at the same height for you to get across, but because you need to move across to the switches to do this, the bridge is off in the background and you can't quite see it. There are other examples, such as a floor you need to rotate into the correct direction to then mimic a pattern onto the tiles, but again as you rotate from where you are located you can't see all of the platform to see if it is the right way round. This also applies sometimes to when shooting the arrows, because for the most part you'll need to be ducked in the grass. Sometimes foreground objects such as blades of grass were in my way, or I couldn't see the enemy's movement well enough to see if they were directly under the trap that I was trying to set, meaning it took a lot longer to execute this trap correctly. A lack of gyroscopic aiming when using the bow exacerbates this problem, and the inclusion of this and just simply pulling the camera back a bit at these moments would have solved this issue. There are some minor platforming sections involved too, not many to be fair, but these again can be a little awkward to pull off. You'll need to sprint using the R button and then jump at the right time. It just never feels as if jumping was a big part of the development plan when the game was being made. And there's also a slide move that can see you go under small spaces, but again you do this by pressing L and R together even when you're not moving. It just felt as if having some sort of momentum and pressing one button would have been a better solution. Gameplay though is actually quite enjoyable. It does take a little while to get going, but when you start to get into some of the later chapters it is quite fun, and it gets 14 out of 20. Controls in terms of movement, but also the location of camera in some of those puzzles do hinder the game at times, and they get 12 out of 20. Now in terms of the visuals, it goes for a low poly look with some quite striking colours used, and this is pulled off to varying degrees of success in my opinion based on some of the locations. The early levels are in bright fields with lush greens and strong blues used, and I do think actually these are a bit too strong in terms of the colours used. Perhaps a paler pastel colour would have been a bit more appropriate for some of the grass. It just feels a bit putrid at times, to be perfectly honest, but other levels such as the ones where you play in the dark really do make good use of light and shadow, and there are some other levels with more autumnal colour schemes that really do work very well and look incredibly pleasant. On a technical level, there is some popping as you move through the levels. It is quite jarring in the earlier game, but you do get used to it as you go through. Performance wise, it was running at 30 frames per second, and bar a couple of minor drops, it did keep this frame rate for the most part. The drops were more noticeable in handheld, but again, never to the point where it was distracting or a problem to the game. In terms of the audio, a lot of it is done via ambience as you move through the levels. I would have preferred a stronger musical score, to be perfectly honest, and the game is fully voice acted, although to be fair, I didn't feel this was particularly strong. Cynthia in particular just didn't seem to have the emotion in her lines that would have been needed, bearing in mind what's going on screen. Visuals certainly look pleasant, although some technical aspects do let them down, and I do think some of the game feels a little oversaturated. They get 15 out of 20. Audio is okay. I do feel like it needed a bit more of an emotional score behind it, and the voice acting for me didn't quite work. It gets 12 out of 20. Cynthia Hidden in the Moon Shadow costs £12.59, although you can get 10% off of this price if you are watching this video close to launch. That sale ends on the 17th of January. Regional equivalents are also on your screen as we speak. Now for this price you are getting 5 chapters as I mentioned. It will probably take most people around about 3 hours to finish. Obviously it depends on your skill level for stealth games and for puzzle solving. And there are some collectibles to find as you go along. You'll find the chapters of the story, hidden in tents as you go around. As well as this, there are some achievements, in-game achievements that you can try to fulfill. And there are also some extra costumes that you can find if you go off the beaten path. And you can change into these at any time in the pools menu. The fact that it does take a couple of chapters for the game to really hit its stride is a concern when you consider it's not very long. And personally, I would be waiting for a sale to pick this one up. Value gets 12 out of 20. To conclude, Cynthia Hidden in the Moon Shadow is a game that, I'll be honest, it did take about an hour to really get into its stride, and when the game is only 3 hours long that's not exactly ideal, but once it did get into its stride I did start to really enjoy my time with it. The puzzles start very simple, but they do pick up to become more head scratching as you go on, and the stealth element of the game really did start to become enjoyable as you unlocked more of your abilities. Perhaps in a game this short, starting with all of your abilities may have been the way forward, and even for the price, which is quite reasonable to be fair, it does still seem a bit too expensive with some of the issues I've mentioned in mind. Doesn't make it a bad game though, and I did enjoy my time with it. If you are looking for something to play over the course of an evening, or perhaps in short sessions over a weekend, you could certainly do worse, but as I mentioned in the value section, I would be waiting for a slightly larger sale of some description in the future. Cynthia Hidden in the Moon Shadow gets a SwitchUp score of 65%. Thank you everybody for watching this review. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do remember to leave a like if you did. Don't forget, if you are looking for eShop credits, pick this one up, or any other game for that matter. You can do so via our website. You can get your eShop cards on there, switchup.gg. Doing so will get you 5% of your purchase price back in cashback, and the code SwitchUp will get you another 5% straight discount off of your order. There's also a link down there to Play Asia if you're looking to import any games. Again, use the link, use the code stated, and you get yourself 5% off of your order from there. A quick thank you to our patrons and our channel members for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, and until next time, happy gaming.